Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Between Two Brokers. It's a new year. It's our first episode. Stacy has passed the torch to moi. So she wants less to do this year. So I will now be introducing our guests, if I don't fuck this up. We are welcoming back Brian Wells of Coastal Creek Design. If you missed his first episode, Brian, of course, remembers that it's episode number 166. I had no idea. I only know
Here's
what the titles
our engineer
are. Yeah, exactly.
with the memory.
They always know numbers.
Yeah, I'm really good with numbers.
Yeah.
And we're going to
I'm
nail
not
you down on that
surprised.
today. Give us some estimates.
Yeah.
So catch us up. I think the last time we were together was maybe over the summer.
Yeah, so I think it was June when I came in last time.
Okay.
Yeah, and for those that don't know you, and did not listen to that episode, quick background on all the things your firm does.
Yeah, so I've been doing structural engineering in Charleston for about 20 years, and about 4 years ago I started hiring architects because I felt like there was a better way to blend the structural engineering and the architecture together. And so we have 12 architects now and 3 structural engineers, and we're the only firm that I know about that has the architects and engineers physically in the same office. So we do this Coastal Creek Design is the name of the company, and we do about 70% renovation addition projects and 20 to 30% new construction designs.
Awesome. One-stop shop.
We were talking a little bit before we started the show about how business kind of sloughed off for you third and fourth quarter, predictably because of the election.
Right.
So it wasn't just our home sales; it was people designing and everything. But I guess they kind of go hand in hand, right? As soon as people buy something, they're like, "Can you start tomorrow?" I know I did that to my mountain guy. I was like, "We close on September 6th. Can you start that afternoon?" Like we want it ASAP.
Yeah.
So shit slowed down for you, and now it's kind of maybe back to normal.
Yeah, I would say we normally have a slowdown in the summer just because people are traveling for vacations and things like that, and that was normal. But I'd say this fall was a little bit slower than normal, and we were fine as a company. But I think there was just a lot of uncertainty leading up to the election, and I think that once the election was done and over, we started getting a lot of calls again for people that had stuff they were thinking about doing and then had it on pause. And I don't think it's really a political thing. I think regardless of either side, it seems to be the same thing every time where there's a lot of uncertainty. People hit pause on projects, and then, once the result is maybe it's your result or the other result, people feel more certainty about what's going to happen and they start moving forward.
Definitely. I mean, I just think everybody was holding their breath. And it's funny because the last episode that we released was actually it was like the week after the election. Mm-hmm. And I had mentioned Erin and I had gone to a open house, and I'd been pretty steady through the fall. But again, that was just only my experience. I don't think it was the office. And I just remember all those agents that are normally quite busy just saying they were like, I haven't been doing anything. And then all of a sudden this week, my phone started ringing. So it's just that, people want to know what's going to happen and what the path forward is. And I agree with you. I don't think it really mattered, but, that's good. I mean, we also saw a stat, recently, cause we've been going through all our 2024 numbers, but like number of transactions in December of 2024 was up almost 16% over 2023.
Wow.
And again, why is that? People are not buying houses at Christmas time.
It's not coincidental.
No, it's just everybody was kind of holding their breath.
Right.
Yeah.
I believe that. And so far in January, it's been great. We've had a lot of calls, people that we've sent proposals to that have said, okay, let's get going. And so I feel like we're going to have a really good year.
Yeah. I'm optimistic too. Are you getting mostly calls about new construction or renovations, or is it?
I think it's still pretty much that 70% renovation addition, just because there's really nowhere to build a house.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
And is it people that already own their house and they're like, okay, we want to stay where we are, we just want to change some things, or are they, hey, we just bought this and we?
Yeah, I'd say it's about half and half.
Yeah.
A lot of people that just are in their house and they don't feel the courage to be able to list it, and try to find the next thing off market or whatever it is, and they're trying to figure out how to take their house to the next level where they can stay in their next phase in the
I'm sure
house.
a lot of it is they don't, they're locked into a peachy interest rate,
Right.
and they're looking at what it costs to move right now, and it's not cheap.
Yeah.
So how are they financing the renovations?
Well, there's what I always suggest people is to try to talk to local bankers that know the market and know the equity and those kind of things. And they're a lot of times they're using equity lines, or
Yeah.
they have so many. I always ask people, when did you buy the house? Because based on that answer, okay, was it before January of 2021 or
Yes.
after January 2021? And that the people that had purchased in 2020 and earlier have so much equity, they're in just a really weird position sometimes. And I'd say also we do a lot of multi-generational designs. So there's a lot of people that have aging parents. They're trying to figure out how to deal with them. They've got kids that want to come back from college, but they can't afford an apartment. And there's a lot of things we're doing where they're trying to figure out accessories and ADUs and all the different things to make more space for their family members.
That was a stat I remember nationally too for the year, that multi-generational housing was up like 17% for affordability reasons. The people in their 20s and early 30s that were used to being able to afford to buy something can't.
Right.
And then, people bringing in their parents, because also like nursing care is so expensive, and retirement communities. So that does not surprise me. I think we're going to continue to see that trend.
Yeah.
I love my mom, but she's not going to live with me ever.
Yeah.
Maybe daddy. I thought about it when I bought my house.
Yeah.
I did. I mean, I have a ranch. I mean, I think it's something that you have to keep in mind. And, yeah. And can you imagine being 31 years old and living with your folks?
No.
That would not be fun.
I didn't even go home between, in the summer between college years. It's like, I'll stay here. I'll figure it out. I'll work 3 jobs. I don't care. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So the renovation stuff are, I know you mentioned like ADUs. They're building them. Are a lot of people doing additions, or are they just like redoing aesthetically things?
No, a lot of people are doing big renovation additions, because they're trying to get the heated square footage they need,
Got
or
it.
they've been living in a place that's got not a great master bedroom, and they're like, okay, I've suffered long enough. I'm starting to make a decent amount of money now, and I need to make it better. I need to make my kitchen better. I know that's hurt the real estate industry, because people are just, they're in these super low interest rates, and they like where they live, and they're trying to make it work.
Yeah, and we've been fortunate because everybody keeps coming to Charleston.
Yeah.
So, our market is has continued to, I mean, I still think it's flourishing. It's still to some degree a seller's market. I mean, we're like in the middle of January, but things are pretty good.
Our population is growing 3 times the national average.
Yeah.
I'm full of stats right now because it's the beginning of the year, and I did an year-end review. So, 3 times the national average. I mean, it surprises me and it doesn't surprise me, I guess. But I get those articles on my phone about, the top markets that people are moving to, or, it's places that are still affordable, and we're never in them. I mean, there's like full of Texas and North Carolina
Right.
cities that are like the top places. And I'm like, how is that possible? I just feel like Charleston's on, everyone's radar. And
It is. I'm getting, and I don't know, in terms of like new projects and the people that you're talking to, and I don't know what your experience has been, but like I am getting more and more kind of like, maybe not COVID level calls from people out of state moving here, but I kind of went through a lull with that for a while, and it's back. I mean, really, like the last 3 months, I feel like I am just talking to people who, some of them have never even been here before, but they're all looking at Charleston, and it's going to increasingly become unaffordable. I don't know what else to say to people. I mean, it's just going to.
it already kind of is.
It is.
Yeah. But there are ways our governments can help to mitigate that and improve it. I think the property rights thing of, for instance, in Mount Pleasant, they restrict the number of ADUs to 20. Every 6 months, they allow 20. In a town of 90,000 people, they allow 40 ADUs a year. I think there's been some discussion about easing that restriction because what they're realizing is, they're taking away the right of a parent to have their kid come back from college because, think about it yourself as a 28-year-old person in this market, and you're like, you've got a couple years back into the market, and you're making money now, and working to buy a house, and it's just not really possible unless you move way out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also I read, Park Circle is going to start to restrict. I think there's a conversation about restricting the short-term rentals.
Yeah.
Because now, the prices there, that used to be
a great
semi-affordable.
spot. Yeah.
And now it's not. And I just don't know how young people can afford that. So, yeah, you're right. They can help with that. But I don't know how much it's going to, it's just going to make the property more expensive for resale, too.
Yeah. I think a lot of it's just families coming together and coming up with a family game plan for how they're going to be able to allow their kids to move back, and when I say that, sometimes people might need to think about selling a house where maybe it's a little larger than what they need, and they buy a smaller house, and then allows you to have a little bit of extra money to help their child get that first house. I think those are the kind of things we're going to start to see around here as parents struggle to try to figure a way to get their college graduates and other family members to be able to live around here.
Yeah, and actually, my neighbors a few years ago bought a house. I think it was like in the $500,000 range in Mount Pleasant, and they rented it out. And I remember her telling me, I just don't know how my kids are ever going to be able to afford anything here. And I thought that was smart.
Yeah.
Just to be able to help them out.
As a parent, is that something you want? Your kids coming home
Yeah.
from college and moving back in with you?
I really
I'm
do.
truly asking. Cause
Yeah.
I want kids.
That's one of my dreams. I think that's
Really?
one of the things that God has put in my heart that's not a self-serving dream, but something that is a good thing for me and my wife and my kids. And I've taken steps to try to allow for that. And, that goes into my development work and other things. I'm trying to make sure that if they want to come back here, they have the option to do that.
How are you doing that in your house? If you're willing to talk about it.
Well, I've done a fair amount of development stuff around Charleston. Mm-hmm. So when I went out on my own as a structural engineer in 2016, I did my first spec house on Sullivan's Island. Mm-hmm. And I was able to use the equity of my house to help start that one, and then that was successful. And then I did another good one on Sullivan's Island. Then I did a couple on Isle of Palms, and just try to do like one at a time. And it's not something that I rely on for income. It's just something that I'm able to kind of keep building that equity of properties that are outside my primary residence. Mm-hmm. And through that also, I think it really makes me a better engineer and, owner of an architectural firm.
Because you're just learning.
Because we're just learning all the time, and we know what the prices are for construction, and we know what the challenges are. So I think it just makes us all around better to advise our clients for the architecture engineering stuff.
So what's going on with prices?
Yeah, so let's talk about renovation prices first. I would say, what I say to people in general is the prices for renovations are double what they were in 2019. So something you could do for $200,000 in 2019, it costs $400,000 now, and that's not I don't believe it's the builders getting rich. I think it's just the subs and suppliers it's just more expensive, and there's so much demand of people coming here that the framer has 3 different places he could go to that day, and just the framing crews, like a guy that would have gotten paid $20 an hour in 2019, now he's getting paid $38 an hour. And, You know, that's just compounded on every trade. And, you know, so when we talk to people about new projects, renovation design stuff, I always start with the price of the construction, because we don't ever want to have somebody sign up for us to be the architect and engineer, and then we go through the whole design process and then they're disappointed on the other side of it when they start getting prices. So
You're my kind of guy. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
when somebody's trying to sell me something, I do not understand why they will not tell me how much it costs. I don't understand, because then I go through the whole thing and I'm like, if I knew it was even going to be half that, we wouldn't have wasted a month of both of our time.
right, yeah,
You know, it's crazy.
And I do that when I'm starting to talk to somebody and I feel like it's a good lead on architecture, engineering stuff. I send an email that kind of gives some information about our company, and I say, generally your range of what the architecture engineering fees would be about this. And because I don't want to waste the time of somebody. You know, I don't think we're the most expensive, we're not the cheapest, but we're kind of right in the middle, but I don't want to waste their time and my time of talking about, you know, a project that we're just not a good fit for. And
What makes one architect more expensive than the other?
well, you know, a lot of it's reputation and demand. You know, there's certain architect names that I could say right now that have been around here for a long time, and they've got a really good reputation. They're in the magazines, and they have a lot of people coming to them for work. And I think that they can just generally just
Name
charge
their
more.
price.
Yeah. And I don't think any of them are overpriced. I would never say that, but they can charge more because they're in demand. You know, the person that's just working out of their house as a one architect or one draftsman person can do it less expensive, but the problem with them is that they get 6 jobs and they're covered up, and they're just going to start working for the person that's yelling the loudest, you know. So I think that when people are thinking about architecture and engineering fees, they have to really not just think about the fees, but they need to think about the product they're going to get, the responsiveness, the you know, the level of service, the quality of the plans. I always tell our customers that, okay, if you're going to pay, let's just say they're going to spend $30,000 for architecture engineering for our plans. I tell them it's maybe a $600,000 construction project. I tell them you're going to save that $30,000 in competition among the builders because it's a really good set of plans. And you're going to meet 3 builders that you don't know right now, because I'm going to give you their names, and they're good guys, good communicators, and those kind of things. So I think there is a benefit to paying a reasonable price for architectural plans that ultimately are going to save you on the project.
Absolutely. That's so well said. I mean, it really matters. You know, you get it back. We talk about that with designers too.
So double the price from 2019, but generally like a square foot. What are we looking at?
So this is what I say a lot of times to people. So let's just say somebody buys a 2,400 square foot house and they want to do like a 600 square foot addition. So that if they do 2,400 plus 600, that's 3,000 square feet. If they wanted to, like, if it was in really bad shape, maybe it was something that burns down or something that's older, and they just needed to gut the whole thing, new electrical, new HVAC, new plumbing. What I tell people to do as far as like a rough price is to multiply the 3,000 square feet times 300. So that would be 900,000 for like a full gut renovation to go from 2,400 to 3,000 square feet. Now, new construction pricing is around $400 to $500 a heated square foot for a good builder that's kind of like a mid-range builder right now. So if you think about the terms of like $450 a square foot for new construction, $300 for renovations, that's kind of taking into account that they have a foundation, they have framing, they have stuff that they can salvage, but from the inside, you're just gutting everything, and you're starting new.
But there are situations, like we've had a builder on here before who has talked about a few examples that he's experienced where both he and the clients went through a renovation and were kind of like, we should have just torn it down and started over. It wound up not being really a cost savings, and then you're settling and not getting what you want exactly because of the limitations of the structure, I guess.
Yeah, we have those conversations a lot. In fact, we were having that conversation last week for a place in the old village where they had a really big lot, and they wanted to spend $1 million on the renovation, which sounds like it is a lot of money. But the problem is you're still going to have those same 8-foot ceilings on the first floor.
Right.
You got to account for the stairs, which take up a lot of space. If you're going to add a second floor, there's a lot of costs and challenges associated with that. They were fortunate they had a big enough lot where they could do a lot of the one-story addition on the lot. But what we came down to was doing that same math of the 300 versus the 450, and they could spend 1.3 on a brand new house. They could spend $1 million on this renovation, and they didn't want to spend the extra $300,000 because they don't want to go into debt. They had a certain amount saved. They had an inheritance, and but I think we're good at having those conversations with people ahead of time, saying let's just make sure you really want to do this.
Right.
And sometimes what we'll do is we'll start with the renovation plans, and we'll measure the house. We'll start to go through a couple different scenarios on after plans, and we charge 20% up front, so it doesn't cost a whole lot of money to get going on that and just kind of see what the possibilities are. Mm-hmm. And then maybe sometimes people stop at that point and say, okay, let's really look at, should we demolish it now and just build new?
Mm-hmm. If someone is in that situation that you just described in the old village where it's million or 1.3, and they say, Brian, what would you do? Do you answer them honestly,
Yeah.
or you say this is not my money?
Well, no, I answered honestly, but I say that in that case I would say if it was me, I would do the 1.3 just because I think it's going to be worth more in the end.
Exactly. The resale is
Yeah,
there.
and also like in this case, they have an X flood zone. They can do a raised slab, mm-hmm. and I don't particularly like rats or other things that come with crawl spaces sometimes.
Right.
And but ultimately, I can't tell them to go into debt for that.
Not.
So it's like all we can do is just try to give them the information so that they can make the best decision, for their family.
100%. I want to make a couple of comments here.
Go.
Guys, okay, $1 million is not a lot of money anymore. Guys, it's not. And I hate saying it, but it needs to be said.
It's true.
Okay? When we were 20, $1 million was a lot of money. That was a long time ago, guys. That was that was decades ago.
Well, and you mean specifically in Charleston. There's a lot of places where $1 million is a lot of money.
Sure, but I hear we have these attachments to numbers from our childhood and our young adulthood, and I happen to know some people that seem to be stuck in prices from 2008 to 2014. I'm thinking about everything, and it's very frustrating, and I just I just want to say to people, because I am not going to tell people what to do with their money ever, but they need to know when they call me, and I mean it with all due respect for their situation and their budget, that it's just not, if you have a $5 million house in New Jersey and you want to retire here for $1 million, if your goal is to retire here for $1 million and get something with an unbelievable view, you need to go somewhere else.
Right.
That's the reality of the situation. So and that's the thing. It's not like these people made the wrong decision. They made the best decision for themselves, and you gave them all the information. But as a real estate agent, I think like you, spend the extra if you have it, and it'll come back to you. But not everybody has, we have all this confidence because of the things that we see. So it's easy for us to say. Yeah,
and we've also had this thing in our mind where we've seen this market go up, 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 up. Mm-hmm. Even before 2020. I mean, during the recession, we were insulated. We were not completely insulated, and there's a lot of people that had some really, really hard times, and people that lost their businesses, but we were, as a region, we were insulated because people were still moving here, and I think all of us in our minds have this thing of, and I do think it's just going to keep going. Hopefully it's not going to continue at the rate it's at right now, because I think it's just not healthy, But
Well, everything is peaks and valleys. The question is,
when is it?
when is the shit going to hit the fan? And none of us know. But it has gone up since 2010,
Yeah.
straight up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I have a question about something you said before we move on to whatever else we're talking about. Raised slab versus slab on ground versus crawl space.
Yeah.
I have a lot of clients, buyers that I'll send a house to, and they're like, "Oh, it's a slab. I don't want to be on a slab." I know one of them had like a plumbing nightmare.
Yeah.
And that's what that was related to. I don't know what the other one's reasons are. What's the benefit to those three different scenarios, and what are the cons?
Yeah. So I'm gonna qualify this by saying I'm gonna assume a good contractor. That's my underlying assumption. So the thing I like about raised slabs is that, for one thing, your architect needs to be mindful of HVAC from the very beginning. So we normally do a 20-inch floor system between the first and second floor that allows for all the main duct line and the other lines to go through there and not restrict it with beams. And we do that through our structural team. But if it's well planned out and you can run the HVAC through that second floor system, I just think it's just such a better house, So you don't have the moisture issues underneath, you don't have the rats, you don't have all the different things. And if you wanted to move a sink or a toilet later on, yes, it's hard, but it's not impossible. You have to pull the tile out, you have to cut the concrete to get the pipe where you want it to be, but it's not impossible.
is it much more expensive to do that?
Well, the price of a raised slab, new construction versus crawl space is pretty much the same.
But doing a renovation.
But renovation on a raised slab can be a little bit more expensive, but not prohibitive. It might cost you, if it's a $450,000 job, it may be an extra $10,000 or $20,000 to do raised slab modifications.
And what height is considered raised slab versus
so
just a regular slab?
Monolithic slab on grade is pretty much right on the ground, maybe like 4 inches up.
Slab on grade. I think I said slab on ground or
Yeah.
slab on grade.
Most of the time, a raised slab one is up like 2 feet.
Yeah.
So you want it to look like a crawl space,
Right.
but you want to have all the benefits of having the slab. And I will say, let's talk about Mount Pleasant for a second. So they had like a new ordinance that came in where you're not allowed to have raised slabs in flood zones, which I think took effect in July last year. So there are a lot of places in Mount Pleasant that are ex-flood zones that you can do raised slabs in, but you need to be mindful of the flood zone because they're pretty strict at enforcing that now in the flood zones.
I've also heard people say, I like a crawl space because it allows the house to breathe.
Okay, but I feel like that's okay. I think when that was said, it was in specifically for historic homes in downtown.
Oh, no, I've heard it a million
Yeah,
times.
I don't know.
Oh.
I wouldn't say that I'm like a building envelope expert, so it's hard for me to completely comment on that. But I'm not sure.
That sounds
I'd
very
agree with
silly
that.
to me on the surface. It does. I love
Yeah.
But have you not
slab.
heard it?
No, I only remember Mike saying it about he didn't want complete crawl space. He did not want to encapsulate crawl spaces in historic downtown Charleston because
yeah.
the house has functioned
Oh yeah.
perfectly.
No, I do think there's
as
a
it
different
is.
rule for downtown stuff.
Yeah. And he wasn't talking about making it a slab, but he was saying that. He's like, look, this thing has been standing for hundreds of years. We're not, let's not mess
with it too much.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I love slab, but I always worry about this too, because I own a rental property that's on slab, and it was like a huge relief. I was like, I have to buy this house. It's newer. It's on I'm the same about crawl spaces because, I can get the guy to crawl under there, but
Yeah.
if you're really checking everything out, I don't know. And it's the bane of our existence is dealing with crawl spaces.
Yeah.
Selling houses is easy. Dealing with inspection reports is hell. Okay,
I know.
And it's almost always about the crawl space. So the one thing about a slab though that I always my nightmare about my investment property is that I have a plumbing thing.
Yeah.
And then I have to replace all the floors, right?
Yeah, but you're going to have to do that on a crawl space too. I mean, I have a friend of mine that, unfortunately, on Friday night he had a water line that was, so he had 2 cats,
Problem
Cats-
number one.
Cat.
Okay. Next.
You got kids, kids want the cats. So, the master bathroom. He's out of town. His cat sitter came the next day and said your house is flooded. So what happened was the cat got on the master tub and knocked it. So it had like a tub filler that was outside the master tub that kind of went over the top. Mm-hmm. The cat bumped it to where that tub filler was just outside the master thing, and somehow got the water on, hot water, and it ran for 14 hours. And so it came through the ceiling and into the kitchen and all that stuff. And I was one of the first persons he called. I went over there on Saturday morning at like 8:30 and saw it. But it's a crawl space. There's no benefit. Doesn't matter whether it's crawl space or raised slab. The first floors are gone. So they got to be replaced. So I don't think the fear of a plumbing issue should be what determines whether you do the raised slab or the crawl space.
Thank you for saying
You
that.
should know, and I would say one thing about homeowners, they should know where their water shutoff valve is for their house.
Yeah.
And
Home inspectors do always point that out in the report. That's just an FYI.
Do you know where yours is?
Yes, I do. I've had to use the water key.
Okay, well, I have homework.
I've turned it off at the street before.
Of course you have.
Yeah.
And if you have one that can only turn off at the street, you can get a plumber to come out and put a valve in there for your house.
They're usually under the kitchen sink, or if you have a raised.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
But it's good, like if you're going out of town for a long time, like a week or longer, it's good to cut off the water unless you got somebody checking on your house.
Yeah.
Adorable, but
or
not
you have
happening.
some dumb cat.
This episode was brought to you by Bad Kitty.
Last February, and I'm just now recovering from this, I had 4 properties under contract at once, and 3 of them had undisclosed polybutylene plumbing.
Oh,
I
man.
remember this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in hell for the whole month of February. They got to go, right?
They do have to go,
Yeah.
If you're an owner and you find that out on the inspection report, you pretty much have to insist that they change it, because you're going to end up having to deal with it when you sell the house.
Yep.
And there's a much greater chance of you having a major plumbing issue if you have that type of.
What were the prices that you got for those? I mean, was it all over the board?
I had one house that had 2 bathrooms, and it was maybe 10 grand, and then another one was like 25.
Yeah. Well, they got to cut out all the drywall wherever the lines are going.
Behind the tile.
It's a big deal.
But that's easier to do on a crawl space than a slab, right?
It is, yeah. But you're not going to have that on a slab because it's new construction. They don't do that.
Yeah.
True. Okay. So what? And when was that? That was late 70s, all 80s.
90s too.
And not all homes that were built in the 80s, but that's when we look at the kind of, I'm trying to think of like all my red flags. It's not even necessarily the cookie cutter neighborhood houses. It's just homes that were built mid 70s, 80s, and early 90s.
Yeah.
You just have to look for it, especially because a lot of the sellers on the seller's disclosure will just put that they don't know what they're,
Yeah.
which then I'm just like,
Oh, my favorite thing is when they only bought it like 2 years ago, and I can see that the same listing agent is the agent that sold it to him. And I asked, does this house have polybutylene plumbing? Because your seller checked no representation. Did y'all have an inspection done when they bought it? Oh, yeah. Okay, well,
can you show it to me?
the inspector told you what the water pipes are. Like, what are you hiding, And go dig it up. I keep all my inspection reports, It's just...
Also,
don't be dirty.
You can look up if the house has sold. I will look up the old seller's disclosure from before if the agent isn't telling me things.
Yep. But a lot of times they're no representation.
Yeah.
Just shisty. When we were talking about the framer who used to get $20 an hour, now he's getting $38 an hour. I want to preface this by saying this is not a political statement. This is a honest question and a concern that I have. I got a quote to paint the exterior of my house last year. It came in at $35,000.
Right.
I was able to find someone to do it for $25,000, and I did not sacrifice quality. I just cut out the contractor who was adding extra money.
Yeah.
They did a great job. The reason we decided to go ahead and pull the trigger on that is because of this threatened mass deportation of illegal migrants who I know take up a majority of the construction labor force. Do you have a concern that if that campaign promise comes true, that labor supply in this field is going to be like drastically cut and send prices even higher?
It could. That's such a massive undertaking. It's hard for me to figure out like how that would possibly work. You know, like I think that
You're just saying unrealistic.
I think it's maybe unrealistic. That I just don't. I think that's what the media does. Is the media makes you think that major things are going to happen. Like that's what.
Did you guys hear
people want.
that? I'm just saying.
That's
I'm
and
just
that's
saying.
not political. That's like an observation.
Yes.
You know, they want to get people to watch their shows. I don't know how in the world they would do it. I think that the immigration issue more is like along the Panama Canal where people are just freely headed that way and knowing they can get in somehow. And I think that they're going to, when they stop the flow in, I don't think there's going to be as much pressure as just getting people out. But again, that's more of just a practicality thing than a political statement. You're going to get me in trouble here.
No.
No, that was a very
I have
neutral answer.
Yeah, and I have a question. I actually thought of a question too, which is you talked about the price going up. We're talking about all these people moving to Charleston. What about the construction workforce?
Yeah.
Are you seeing any growth in that, or is Charleston so unaffordable now that it's?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be growing. Yeah. I mean, I can't comment on like Nexton and Ridgeville and areas like that, but I feel like we have reached the point on construction prices where they're not going to keep going up like housing prices. I think we've pretty much gotten to where we are, and they're going to gradually increase, but I don't think you're going to have steep increases in construction prices. And I do think there is more among the builders that I know. It seems like they're more hungry right now to be finding new jobs. I think the slowdown we talked about from last fall is delayed to them because we would normally be doing more plans in the fall and they'd be bidding them.
Right.
And so that's just kind of, pushed everything out a little bit.
To tie up the burns down example,
Yeah.
which, to me is, if you find a 2,400 square foot home and burns down, I mean, that's $1 million, and then you put another 900 into it to renovate it and add $6. So you're looking at a $2 million. Anyway, how long would a project like that take?
So to get through us, generally we say our process is like 2 months, 6 to 8 weeks for the architecture and the engineering plans. And then the permitting, Mount Pleasant permitting right now takes 4 to 5 months. And it's shocking.
Is that the slowest in the area?
It is the worst in the area. The second worst is Charleston County, which is about 3 or 4 months. But downtown's always been pretty good. Isle of Palms is fine. Sullivan's is fine. Kiowa is fine, But so if you average like 2 months of design work, another 4 months of permitting and bidding at the same time. So you're at 6 months before your project starts. And then I'd say every project you should kind of have like a year as your benchmark. You should expect a year. If it's a little simpler project, maybe it's 6 to 9 months. If it's a new construction project, if you have a good builder, it should take 12 to 14 months if you're making good decisions and those kind of things.
Okay. I want to talk about my morning this morning. No, it's fine. Stacy's giving me the look.
I didn't miss him anything else.
I was showing houses in South Windermere, and there were two that were built in the 50s. One was the original owner. Okay, it was built in 52.
I would probably love it.
Yeah, it had these beautiful mauve walls. Very choppy, very strange floor plans. This sweet woman, she said she wanted to live till she was 100, and she died 3 days after her 100th birthday. But
why we need goals?
Huh?
This is why we need goals.
Yeah, right. And the other folks have lived there for like 40 something years. So like nothing has been done to either of these houses. And we're kind of walking through, and they've got 2 kids, and just talking about the slew of things that need to be done and are there these houses. And I'm like, either one of these is like at least going to be $500,000 to renovate. And they were like, well, maybe we could live with this part and, sacrifice that to get this or whatever. What's the order of like most expensive, you're moving walls, I assume, or, whatever, down to like, you can get away with $100,000 renovation if you're just doing A, B, and C.
Yeah. Well, let's just make this assumption that they're not going to add to the footprint. They're just going to live within the footprint.
Correct.
They may take some walls out, and those, I think the biggest bang for your buck is going to be your master bath first,
Okay.
and then your kitchen. And to take down that wall between the kitchen and the living area is a really good thing to do. And that may cost you, $20,000 to put the beam in and get the finishes and all that stuff, but it makes a really big difference.
Big difference,
I
yeah.
do think that when people are thinking about doing a project and they've got a tight budget, or they don't want to do it, they don't want to blow it all in the kitchen, they need to really be mindful of selecting cabinets that are just reasonable cabinets. White shaker cabinets that are not super fancy are fine.
From where? Like
Well-
Lowe's?
No.
Yeah, I mean, you have to talk to your contractor. So there's a lot of different people at different levels that do, different levels of finish. But you could have a new kitchen cabinet wise could be like $15,000 for shaker cabinets that are decent cabinets, and then appliances, you don't have to go super fancy on the appliances, just a good new appliance package that's GE or whatever, can really, is fine.
They're all going to shit the bed in 6-7 years anyway.
I know. And I'd say master bedroom, master bath, kitchen, those are the things you really want to be like concentrating on. And then, kitchen bath remodels are usually 15 to 20,000 per bathroom for new tile and maybe new vanity and a countertop. Those are really good investments. Those old houses usually have really good floors.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, maybe the only good thing.
yeah.
What are the ceiling heights like in those?
One had like a slanted ceiling, and it was a split level, so like the ceiling heights are all over the place. The other one, in the main living space, the kitchen, the dining room, the living room, the foyer, it was probably 8.5, but there was nothing above it, so they could blow through and vault that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say, that's something that I will always point out to people, and I know you mentioned it about a renovation, is like, my house, I think the bedrooms are 8.5, and then I have all vaulted in the main living area. But when I put my house on the market, I had people say, I can't live with this master, particularly with the low ceilings. That's a big deal, and it's a deal breaker, and it's actually something that comes off on a lot of my lists that might surprise people is ceiling height, and it doesn't. I used to always joke about my tall clients and stuff. That's not it.
Yeah.
It's the feeling,
Yeah.
and I think if you have the ability to make an effect there, you should.
Yeah. And we're always looking for that opportunity when we're
Right.
doing designs. And a lot of that's tied to the structural aspect of how do you actually make that work. But, a very small space with high ceilings feels a lot bigger.
Exactly, and
You know what else they both had was amazing fireplaces. Just like
that gets Erin excited.
yeah, well, they were beautiful and just like real. One question that we had this morning was that one of the houses was right next to the elementary school, and we could hear like kids in playground time, which doesn't bother them because they have kids, and you couldn't hear it inside the house. But they were like, what? When we go to sell this in 15 years, how is that going to affect things? And I'm like, I don't think I've ever sold a house that was directly next to a school. What's your opinion?
10 to 15% less value.
Yeah.
And part of it is the traffic. So because I had to sell all those townhouses across from Daniel Island School. So it was literally like a apples to apples comparison, because we had these Beezer townhomes across from the elementary school and the same exact things not. And
So at 7 a.m. and 2:30 p.m., it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And it just, it's not, and it's not, it's like being across from anything. It's like being on a busy street, and or being across from apartments or things like that. I think that people generally like just kind of uniformity. I've had so many people say this to me when I've been showing them houses. Is that, and like, remember what Sullivan's Island used to be like when you would have at that time, $1 million house, and then, you know, Billy Bob's trailer next to you.
There's still a few of those out there.
Yeah.
Billy Bob's still painting houses
Yeah.
on Sullivan's then.
Yeah.
But you know, they would say, I want to look out my front door and I want the houses around me to resemble my house. That's something that's important to me. So
A lot of those people miss the boat.
Well, so
Oh my
that's what I was
God.
going to say. So that's opportunity.
Yeah.
You know,
It pays to be a pioneer. I'm having this issue in Old Mount Pleasant, where it's like we've got a new construction on a street where not many houses have turned
Yeah.
over, and the
Yeah.
only negative feedback is we don't like the
Exactly.
street. And it's like, well, you can wait 2 years and the street's going to look completely different,
Right.
and you can pay $250,000 more.
Yeah.
Pays to be a pioneer.
Definitely. I would love to discuss are there any new trends? I don't even pay attention to anything
Right.
anymore. I mean, what are people doing that is like different, or are they still doing
Yeah, it's pretty much the same stuff.
all white?
we don't have any interior designers on staff, you know, yet.
I was going to
Yeah.
ask.
I don't think we're going to do that. You know, we have a lot of great partnerships with, you know, I'd say 15 to 20 interior designers I know really well. And we're good about bringing them in to our projects and having them sit at the table, you know, to input. And that really does help the process as well. But I can't really comment on, I'm not smart enough to know what the latest
All right.
thing is.
Well, let me think of another thing I can get you going on. What are the things that people skimp on that you would not personally?
You know, I think that when it comes to these properties, and everything kind of to me goes back to Mount Pleasant, because that seems to be the most restrictive, is just how much property you have and what's the maximum footprint we can get on that property. You know, because I think that people fall in
You're
love.
talking about 29464 though, specifically.
29464.
Okay.
So I think people need to be more mindful of the size of the lot when they're trying to figure out the right house for them to buy, and not necessarily. To me, the size of the lot can trump the curb appeal, because just like we were talking about before, there may be a point in your life where you want to put an accessory building behind it or the addition. I'd rather have a little bit more ugly house and have the ability to have the square footage I'd like, and try to make it look the best I can. You know, I think people get just a little bit too tied up on the aesthetics of things when they're thinking about the potential of that property.
100%.
Because they live in Instagram world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can get there. You know, you may not get all the way there. You can make it look a lot better than whatever it is. But I just say the general public just needs to be better at not judging something right away when they see it.
Well, looking at the big picture, but it's hard to do. And another thing I want to talk about is, like, I talk myself out of sales constantly, which I know is not smart for me, but it's smart for my clients, because I will tell them, you know, I mean, you did this morning, like how much things are going to cost.
Yeah.
Now, they don't always listen, obviously. And it's not just expense, but it's timeline. And, you know, I can sit there until I'm blue in the face and be like, it's going to cost this. But also, you know, when you are getting these people, do you think that they're not listening to their real estate agents when they give you these kind of like unrealistic, and you're like, okay, we're way off? Or do you think that their real estate agents are not advising them on, okay, like all the things that you're talking about?
Yeah.
And how can real estate agents be better with their clients?
Well, I think they just need to. I think that real estate agents need to be a little more educated when it comes to just construction pricing. And you know, every real estate agent has a friend that's a builder, you know, or multiple builders. They need to be having lunch with those builders, taking them out to lunch and saying, "Hey, let's talk about pricing for a while," you know, and just things like that, or however situationally where, you know, if they've sold a house, follow up with that client later on and say, how much did that renovation end up costing you? What's the contract price? I just think, we just need to better serve these clients, because we don't want to have them enter into a journey and then they get to the point where they're just so disappointed because they figure out how much it's going to cost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, what I want to say is like, it's like short-term thinking. I think everybody has the ability to get this information, okay? But I don't think everybody wants to share it, because I think that they can be self-interested, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a shame.
Mm-hmm.
And, what I want to say to those people is like, they're going to blame you. And they're not, if you go in and you say that something's going to cost $100,000 and every builder they talk to says it's going to be $500,000, you're not going to get that future sale, and you're not going to get any of those referrals.
Yeah.
It's just short-term thinking.
Yeah.
And so, again, like I get on my high horse about the responsibility that we have, but I want my client talking to contractors and things like that before on their own. I mean, I don't even want to be the telephone person.
Mm-hmm.
I want them doing their own due diligence and hearing it from somebody other than me. They're annoyed with me telling them all the stuff that, I'm just crushing dreams right and left, It's highly irritating. I know it is. I don't want to say it.
I'm kind of the dream smasher sometimes.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think it's the responsibility, and I do think, and again, it's not like it's a waste of your time to have a short conversation with somebody who's potentially a lead.
Oh yeah. Just going back to what you just said about the people that cut corners to try to get the sale, mm-hmm. or anybody in life, some people call it karma. I call it God's favor. And if you're somebody that's ethical and you do the right thing and it costs you in the short term, I know that in the long term it's going to pay off. Mm-hmm. And, I think that for the realtors that are listening, if you're tempted to try to make the truth that's going to help you make that sale, it's ultimately long term, it's not going to help you. And ultimately, when we serving people, God calls us to serve people and love them, and that's mm-hmm. the best way to do it, is just be honest with them.
Yeah, take care of everybody. And if you're working for somebody who's telling you to focus on sales or something like that and not do this, then you need to find somebody else, because then it's not a long-term career thing.
And it's really not just the cost of it all. Like what I told my folks this morning is, having been through this and obviously been an agent for other clients going through this, aside from the $500,000 that you're going to put into the process is going to saturate you.
Yes.
You both own your own businesses. You've got 2 kids under 5. You've got a new puppy. You're going to have to live somewhere else while this is going on. You go to the tile store and there's 1,200 options. Like it's days and days and days of decision making, and you cannot even fathom the number of decisions that you have to make. If you want to hire a designer, you're going to add 10-15% more to your budget, and she can bring you, hey, here's 3 tile options, pick one. But if you're not going to go that route, this is a part-time job for you, and you will be saturated for the next year. Can you take that on?
I think it's 5,000 decisions is what they said.
5,000?
Yeah, in the house.
Yeah,
it's like something crazy.
I remember when my builder asked me what kind of bevel I wanted on the countertop, and I was like, "What is that? Just give me the regular one,
Regular old bevel.
I want the regular bevel."
That John.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, anything else before we wrap up?
Just going back to what you just said about the process, that's at Coastal Creek Design. That's our firm. I really do feel like that's the best thing we do is walk people through that process. So we try to tell people, you don't need to know everything. I'm going to tell you a lot of things as I'm describing what's about to happen, but you don't really need to remember any of them. Because every time you're in a design meeting with us, we're going to talk about what your next step is, where you are, should you be talking to builders yet? And, we're kind of like the quarterback for the whole thing. So people that do want to take on a renovation addition or new construction drawings, like contact us at Coastal Creek Design. We'll walk you through the process. We'll talk to you about what your construction budget's going to be and all the different things, so that it makes it as easy as you can for us to get the best plans we can and then hand them off to a really good builder for your project.
And again, I'm going to go back to this. I've said it so many times, but the advice that I was given in terms of choosing a contractor, and one of the reasons I love supporting your business, is you're so easy to talk to. The advice I was given is, who do you want to call when you're freaking out?
Yeah.
And you're very soft spoken and confident, and I just think, yeah, I mean, I just think you need somebody who's level and experienced, and we're gonna get through this, and calm.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming back and joining us.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
easy today.
Yeah, great.
And
to
the
see you.
website is coastalcreekdesign.com.
Yeah, that's the best way for people to get in touch with us is go to coastalcreekdesign.com. There's an inquiry form on there. There's a lot of information, contact number, and we'd love to talk to you about your project.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I got this.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We will see you next time. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and tell all your friends about Between Two Brokers.